Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, AMU, Aligarh. Today I'm going to talk about the concept of liberty, and this is my third video. So I'll be talking about the Marxist concept of liberty, or freedom, as they call it. So the Marxist concept of freedom is different from its liberal individualistic concept. Now here, the Marxists, they analyze freedom against the background of those socio-economic conditions. Now, according to Marxist view, freedom is not something that an individual can enjoy in isolation or being left alone, as the laissez-faire economist, the liberalist, the capitalist liberal exponents, they talk about. So Marxist does not accept the theory of the individual as an automized or as an alienated or a kind of a possessive individualism or possessive individual being capable of enjoying freedom alone, separate from other individuals. So Marx and Engels, in their joint work, that is Holy Family, in 1844, they observed, highlighting their concept, saying that the members of civil society are not atoms. The specific property of the atom is that it has no property, and it therefore is not connected with beings outside it by any relations determined by their own natural necessity. So the atom has no needs. It is self-sufficient. The world outside is absolute vacuum for it. That is, it is countless, it's senseless, it is contentless as well, and it is meaningless. So just because the atom has all its fullness in itself, the egoistic individual in civil society may, in his non-sensuous imagination and lifeless abstraction, inflate himself to the size of an atom, that is, to an unrelated, self-sufficient, wantless, absolute, full, and blessed being. Now, they rejected this atomistic view of individual, and Marx and Engels, they argued that the natural need of man, the way conditions of his existence bring him into a natural relationship with other individuals, and the civil society comes into existence as a consequence of that. Now, this civil society holds the individual together. So, individuals is not atomistic. He is in fact a social being, and he lives in a natural environment where he is in contact with other individuals, and they form a civil society. So Marxism does not accept the utilitarian view that common interest can be derived from any kind of a mechanical aggregation of self-interest of different individuals. On the contrary, the Marxism holds that the common interest can be served only by creating socio-economic conditions, and those conditions which are conducive to the enjoyment of freedom within society. So these conditions, they involve access to certain material means of satisfaction, and this satisfaction of wants and opportunity of self-development. So the key to freedom, according to them, lies in the rational system of production, which can provide the means for which satisfaction and development can take place, and individuals can do their development. So as John Lewis, in his Marxism and Open Mind in 1976, elucidates that for Marx, freedom means the ability to achieve the totality of human good, satisfaction of aspirations, material and spiritual, and the fundamental to which is the mastery and the rational control of the process of production and the material condition of human life. Now, according to Marxist view, the capitalist system of production is not at all conducive to condition of human freedom. Now, here it is characterized by constraints and necessity. Now, necessity denotes the condition under which the life of man is governed by law of nature. Now, such as the law of gravitational force, which exists independent of man's will. Now, man can acquire scientific knowledge of these laws for his own benefit, but cannot change them at his will. So as Engel points it out, saying that necessity is blind only insofar as it is not understood. So freedom does not consist in any dream of independence from that natural law. In fact, it is the knowledge of these laws which makes an individual free, because then it uses that knowledge in its own betterment. So the possibility that it gives the systematic making of them work towards the definite end becomes a reality. So this applies both to the laws of external nature and to the laws of one's own nature, as angels. Further, he observes, saying that freedom therefore consists in control over ourselves and our external nature, a control which is founded on knowledge of of natural necessity. Now, it is therefore necessarily a product of historical development. Now, the first man who separated themselves from the animal kingdom were in all essentials as unfree as the animal themselves, but each step forward in the field of culture was a step towards freedom. So the capitalist system has been facing the continuous crisis because society is suffocated beneath the weight of its own productive forces and the products that they bring out, and which it cannot use, and thus stands helpless, face to face with the absurd contradiction that the producers have nothing to consume because consumers are wanting, and the expensive force of the means of production, it bursts the bounds of the capitalist mode of production that had imposed upon them. So their deliverance from this bond which they have created for themselves is one precondition, that is to which is unbroken, is to somehow break that bond and accelerate the development of productive forces, and therewith a practically unlimited increase in the production itself. Now, a scientific analysis of the force of production reveals that only socialization of means of production can help society to tide over this crisis, which would usher in a new era of freedom. Now, as Engels has elaborated, man's own social organization, till now unconfronted him as a necessity imposed by nature and history, now becomes the result of his own free action. So the extraneous objective forces that have till then governed the history, they pass into the control of man himself. So only from that time, when man himself with full consciousness make his own history, only from that time will the social causes set in motion by him have in the main, in the constantly growing measure, the results which he intended for himself. So it is humanity's leap from the kingdom of necessity to the kingdom of freedom. This is what will be created when he gains a control over those forces of production. Now, a similar focus on freedom is to be found in the picture of future community of society, or communist society, as depicted by Marx and Engels in a Communist Manifesto in 1848. So, when in the course of development, the class distinctions have disappeared and all production have been concentrated in the hands of the vast society of the whole nation, that is, when they are socialized, the public power will lose its political character. That is, in place of the old bourgeois society with its classes and class antagonism, here now we are going to have an association in which the free development of each is a condition for the free development of all. Now, a humanistic basis of freedom is achieved here when Marx, in his economic and philosophical manuscript in 1844, discovered and published later, it laid down the ethical basis of socialism and humanistic foundation of freedom. Now, he severely criticized in that manuscript the capitalist system for its dehumanizing effect. Marx, he demonstrated that the capitalist system deformed the productive activity of the man and caused his alienation in several ways. Now, accordingly, the alienation of man is in the contemporary society was an outcome of the system of commodity production, division of labor, private ownership, market economy, the monetization of exchange, and similar features of capitalist system, which promoted mass production on large scale, and individuals, they were reduced to the level where they were producing one product, and that could be the one part of the product for days and months and years. Like, for example, if the factory is producing the ready-made shirts, so the employees are not responsible for producing, or one employee is not responsible for producing the whole shirt. One of them could be uh, just knitting it, one could be simply cutting it, other could be simply stitching one part of, let's say, the sleeves or cuffs. So at the end, that same individual is doing that same kind of cutting work for number of months and years, and at end he keeps on doing that same work, and he is alienated from his skills and the skill of producing a shirt itself in its complete form. Now, Karl Marx identified four levels of this alienation which takes place for an individual as he goes on alienating himself from the skills and finally to himself. And first, in the first place, he says man is alienated from his own product and from his own work process, because the worker plays no part in deciding what to produce and how to produce that. He doesn't know that, he doesn't participate in decision-making process, nor he was involved into it in a factory setup. Secondly, man is alienated from nature because his work does not provide him a sense of satisfaction as a creative worker. He is more of a machine, a mechanized work, which tends to become increasingly routinized and monotonous because he is doing the same kind of work for days and months and years. So in the third place, the man is further alienated from the other man through the competitive character of the economic system. Now, this forces everyone to live at someone's expense and divide society into irreconcilable class and interest. And finally, the man's alienation is complete when he is alienated from himself, because the realm of necessity dominates his life and reduces him to the level of animal existence, leaving no room for the taste of literature, art, or cultural heritage. So thus, capitalism subordinates all human faculties and qualities of the conditions created by the private ownership of capital and property. The capitalist himself, no less than the worker, becomes a slave of this tyrannical rule of money making. So the deliverance from this bondage is only to be found in the realization of that society, the creation by which man attains a full measure of freedom. Now, this which is obstructed by these peculiar conditions created by the private property, and these conditions exist in their worst form under the capitalist system. So its remedy may be found in socialist revolution. This revolution will bring or enable a society to restore the human values and inaugurate a new era of freedom. Now, Engels elucidates by saying that by this act, the proletariats, they free the means of production from the character of the capital they thus have borne, and give their socialized character complete freedom to work itself out. So socialized production upon a predetermined plan becomes henceforth a possibility. So the development of production makes the existence of different classes of society henceforth an anachronism, and in proportion as anarchy in social production vanishes, the political authority of the state, it also dies out. And man, at last the master of his own form of social organization, becomes at the same time the lord over nature and his own master, and that is a free being. Now, in short, while the liberal individualistic theory of freedom concedes that freedom of man can be secured with minor adjustments within the capitalist system, Marxist theory postulates the transformation of capitalist system itself to secure the condition of freedom. Now, Herbert Marcuse, who claimed to be a Marxist, he also gave a brilliant analysis of the problem of freedom in contemporary Western society. Now, orthodox Marxist as well as anti-Marxist, they have been insisting on a kind of a scientific and economic interpretation of Marxism. So, in contrast, Marcuse, like many other neo-Marxists, he underlines the subjective, critical and humanistic dimension of Marxism, and he rejects social Marxism as a distorted version of Marxism, and the Soviet Marxism which came in USSR, he considered it as a distorted version, and he sought to revive the original, the manuscript form which was given by Karl Marx, the humanistic interpretation of Marxism as a tool of analysis as well as the instrument of social change. And according to him, he says capitalism exercises a kind of a monopolistic control not only on the production and distribution, it also creates the desire and demand for commodities through a clever manipulation of mass media. So the result is a widespread craze for consumer goods, which develops into a distorted second nature of man. And here the consumer capitalism renders the oppressed section insensitive to their original discontent. They stimulate a kind of a trivial materialistic desire which can be easily satisfied by the products that they have produced. So the genuine urge for freedom, that disappears against the desire which was created for materialistic things. So under these circumstances, they should first be awakened to realize their condition of alienation in order to arouse their urge for freedom. That is what Marcuse talks about. And then Marcuse has given a blueprint of a society where alienation will be removed and freedom will be restored. Now, this will be a democratic society or democratic community where work will become pay, work will become a play kind of a thing, and a necessary labor will be organized in harmony with liberated and authentic individual needs will be the one which will be catered, and discontinuance of repressive performance will be eliminated as surplus repression, thus freeing the person from alienated labor. So Marcuse concludes with an optimistic note that Western society has already evolved a technology which is geared to meet most of the human needs. Now it is sufficient to enable man to live in freedom and dignity. Once they understand the necessity of conditions of freedom, they can transcend the era of violence and anarchy and build a new society where freedom will rule supreme with the help of the technology that now they have control and command over. So Marcuse's views concerns the possibility of happiness. It has been criticized on many grounds. Some critics believe that human needs are endless and gaps between aspirations and achievements will never allow human beings to attain the happiness. Then who would bring about that revolution? So Marcuse has no faith in the revolutionary potential of the proletariat, and he pins his hope on the marginal elite or unbrainwashed students or radically dispossessed members of the poorest classes. Now some critics argue that after denying the revolutionary potential of the proletariat, does Marcuse not loses his Marxist character? But that remains a moot question. We move on to the creative freedom which was given in line with the Marxist concept of freedom by McPherson. Now McPherson, he does not claim to be a Marxist, yet he is one of the acute critic of capitalism. And here we are including his point of view when he calls himself, one of the exponent of one of the experts calls Norman Barry, an introduction to modern political theory in 1989, he calls him a neo-Marxist. So in his celebrated work, A Democratic Theory, Essays in Retrieval in 1973, McPherson argues that Western democratic theory is characterized by basically two principles. One is maximization of utility and second is maximization of powers. So under the first principle, man is recognized as a consumer when he is maximizing his utilities. So he is essentially a bundle of appetite demanding satisfaction from society. And the second principle, maximization of powers, is derived from John Stuart Mill's revision of orthodox utilitarianism. J.S. Mill's revision of orthodox utilitarianism. It is an ethical principle that treats man as a doer or creator. Now, it demanded development and application of his uniquely human capacities. Now, the essence of freedom lies in fully realizing his creative faculties. So, real freedom can be exercised through development of power as distinguished from extractive power. Now, developmental power, it requires a proper development of one's human faculties and their potentialities and their application to one's self-appointed goals, while extractive power involves making use of others' potentialities for serving one's own ends. Now, in modern political theory, power is always defined so as to convey the idea of extractive power because it gave a factual description of the power relations of the capitalist market society. So what Macpherson tries to argue is that the capitalist market society developmental powers of the poor section is negligible and their extractive power is nil. On the contrary, the owners of the land and the capital, they wield immense power to exploit the manual and intellectual power of the non-owners. So, in other words, the poor who are constrained to sell their capabilities according to the needs of the market have little opportunity in maximizing their developmental powers. Now, their developmental powers, which is a key to their real creative freedom, is continuously eroded in such a society. So, Macpherson's conclusions that it is only in the welfare state, that is a variety of capitalism, that there is a certain amount of checking of economic power by the potential power. So, to coming to the evaluative part of what Marxists have been saying is that Marxists saw the state itself as an instrument of dominant class, and it envisages the withering away of the state as a way to human freedom and emancipation. Now, libertarians, which we discussed in our previous video, was, and in the words of Berlin, they contended that the state could guarantee negative liberty alone, and that the individual himself was responsible for winning or losing positive freedom. On the other hand, neo-Marxist thinkers like Marcuse held that necessary means of production were already available in contemporary Western society, that the individual was deprived of his freedom as he became a slave to technology and consumer capitalism. Now, that a genuine urge for emancipation will go a long way in establishing a new social order where freedom will reign supreme. Now, in a nutshell, what we conclude is that the quest for freedom is a continuous process. Although freedom is sought by individuals, yet it cannot be enjoyed by individuals in isolation. The genuine freedom which Marxists are talking about, that is a maximum possible freedom, can be attained only in congenial social order, where the line in the line of Marxist phraseology is that free development of each will be the necessary condition for the free development of all, and that is only possible in socialism, where individual is not acting like an atom, that is a self-contented unit. It is in fact acting along with the members of the society, and the real freedom and the true freedom can only come when he enjoys along with them, and that the developmental creativity power that it has, it can really manifest when he is not working alone but working in company with the full understanding of what he is creating and involving himself in decision-making process, and not just being a cog in the machinery or just a part of the machine which is providing or which is making a product, but as a creative individual who has the happiness of evolving or creating or producing a thing which is in totality, not just a part of it, and that he does as a developmental individual who understands and who gains control over that nature of the product, and with that he harnesses it in its own welfare and in his own benefit. And that is all what Marxists are trying to project, and that can only be possible when the state, which is a dominant tool of dominant class, it will wither away, or it will be controlled by the proletariats or the working class in their own benefit. Now, with that, I come to the end of what the Marxist has to say about the liberty. Thanks for watching. Thank you.